YouTube, what's going on? HeirofCarthage here, and I am back in Troll Country. Man, there's nothing quite that feels like home than like Troll Country, and I guess especially when we get Warhammer 3. Yeah, well, I'm thinking Ogre Kingdoms, Ogres, Trolls, different thing, but whatever. Hey, Troll Country's home. If it's not, then get a new home. So we're going to see a High Elves versus Beastmen matchup here, and it should be fun. It's going to be High Elves led by Tyrion and a Noble. Tyrion is on foot, as is the Noble. Got the Heralds of the Wind and one other Illyrian Reaver Archer. And then we've got some Silverin Guard. Cool unit, and they're mixed with Rangers, so this was kind of the last DLC that we got before this one. But yeah, Rangers and Silverin Guard, both interesting additions, and they're going to be used here against the Beastmen, which I think will be somewhat appropriate. We do have a Frostheart Phoenix. Now, remember, for those of you not familiar with this bird, it deals nice weapon strength, has magical attacks, and it has a frost or a slowing effect, I think, on the units around it. I have to pull it up here to be 100% certain about what the effects do. It's this right here, this Hex. So it's a good Hex. It debuffs, and remember, it's different than the Flamespire Phoenix, which has much more attack. Melee attack, I should say, but less damage and stuff. So it's more of a support unit. But the front of the Beastmen line was just a bunch of Ungor Spears. They're backed up by 4 Ungor Raiders, 2 Centaurs with throwing axes. Already got a pendulum rolling through this archer over here. It's a really nice call. And then there were several Razor Gore herds in the back. They are led by Morghur the Shadowcave, and also supported by a Bray Shaman, Lore of Death, on his chariot. So the Beastmen army takes the fight with the High Elves. They have to. They will not win said fight as far as the infantry goes, but I don't think that was the expectation from the Beastmen player. There's a lot of damage-dealing elements to the Beastmen army, including one that I haven't called out yet, which is the Eye of Morslib back here on the hill, and he has been throwing in some nice support here, pun intended, throwing. He's been doing some pretty decent damage. There's a Shadow Mage here, too, for High Elves, which you all have seen the Pendulum from. There's also Pit of Shades available, and then the Bray Shaman is, I think, yeah, Fate of Buna and Spirit Leech. Here comes another Pendulum shredding through an Ungor Raider. So that's 2 Ungor Raiders that have been beaten up pretty good by the Pendulum, and we also had a Sunfang, which was the fiery attack that hit this Ungor Raider a moment ago. So nice use of breath spells by the High Elves here to try and eat through the support units. One of the big problems that the High Elves are going to have, though, are these Centaurs with throwing axes. They got a lot of ammo. They're not going to be easy to catch. And right now, the only units that can best counter them, which is the Illyrian Reaver Archers, are kind of being kept busy with other things. Look at these throwing axes as they get a hold of that Frostheart Phoenix. Here's that Shadow Mage striking again, really hurting some Ungor Raiders, so nicely done. Very good support by the Shadow Mage at this point. There's 36 kills, but likely a lot more damage than that dealt as we go to take a look in the end. I love that they added that where we can see those stats. The Razor Gore herds are going to try and keep the Illyrian Reaver Archers back, and they should. Definitely don't want to lose unit models or ammo from these Centaurs with throwing axes. They're going to do a quick charge to try and help clean up Rangers. Rangers will do great against any of the infantry here. They'll do terrible against cavalry and other large units. They're really geared only towards low armor infantry. And in that task, they do pretty darn well, but get them out of that task and not so much. Now, the Frostheart bought the farm here earlier as the Centaurs took it down, and now it's going to be left up to the Silverin Guard, which let's get a close look at these units. Very cool High Elf units, heavily armored spearmen, nice silver shields that they carry with them as well. Good anti-large damage. Now, some of you might be thinking, anti-large? Why anti-large? Well, you don't, I mean, against the Beastmen, it's always appropriate to have some anti-large, but not only that, the armor of the Silverin Guard make them really a tough match, especially when you combine it with the martial prowess that they get initially. This unit doesn't have it because of its damage, but like right here, 55 melee defense, it's not easy to overcome for cheaper infantry, so honestly, it's a pretty solid pick versus the Beastmen because it counters large well, and it's going to go good against any infantry besides a Bestigor. And Bestigor could possibly be dealt with by the Shadow Mage anyway, so I do think it's an interesting pick. The Noble over here is getting owned by the throwing axes, which are very intelligently keeping their distance from the fight. And kind of, it looks like that the High Elves are winning big time, right? Oh, wrong. Look at the power bar. Power bar disagrees because of all the axes. And then the Eye of Morslib back here. Now remember, he's good in melee too. And then you still got Morghur rolling around here. I do believe he's had one Chaos spawn pop up, yeah, because we can see him laying dead here. The crazy Chaos Crabmen. Another excellent Pendulum coming through the archers over here. That has just been very focused and very well done by the Shadow Mage, who now has 101 kills and has no doubt contributed a large part to this battle. Yeah, Morghur is very tough. He replenishes, he's got poison damage, so it's going to hurt the leadership and the weapon strength of the units attacking him, so it's pretty effective. We're going to see some charges here to try and help Morghur, though these Centaurs with throwing axes will probably want to get away from this, and maybe let the Bray Shaman do some work. As he cycle charges, he could be pretty effective here because of the anti-infantry and armor piercing that's available. Bray Shaman on a chariot is a great support unit for the Beastmen. Really a fantastic support unit because of their AP anti-infantry capabilities. They're good against skirmishers. They're good against pretty much any infantry unit, low or high armor. They're very useful indeed. You can see the Shadow Mage here attempting to get in the Centaurs, and does, but, I mean, very well is going to get overmatched here, and that's exactly what happens. There's a Spirit Leech and a concerted effort, and the Shadow Mage is suddenly going to be headed to the shadows. A very slow chase scene going on here, too, between Morghur and Tyrion. Going to see Tyrion attempting to get in now. Given the opportunity, Tyrion would own Morghur in a melee fight. Morghur doesn't have the AP necessary, and Tyrion's fire damage would be... why doesn't Tyrion do fire damage? Could have sworn he did. How stupid. He doesn't even do magic damage, and he's got a flaming sword. CA, please. This dude should at least do fire damage, I think. But never mind. So Morghur wouldn't have any excess damage dealt to him by Tyrion, even though one would think, since he's carrying a flaming sword against a unit that regenerates, but I digress. The Eye of Morghur gets thrown in, and he's going to put his melee powers up to the test, and this dude hits hard. 450 weapon strength, 54 melee attack, and it is magical, which will bypass the physical resistance on Tyrion. Well, actually, I thought Tyrion had Fizz resistance. He doesn't. Tyrion does have fire resistance, so at least that's something. Oh, I thought he had physical resistance. I guess I was mistaken. That was the Silverin Guard that I was... No, it was a Ranger unit that I was passing over. Okay, yeah, it was the Ranger unit I was passing over. I got it. My bad. Anyway, Tyrion holds his own. Air's all kinds of confused today. Pushes back the Eye of Morghur, and the fight continues over here. The Centaurs are throwing axes, now being chased by Illyrian Reaver archers. They need to just kind of flee away from that and kill them with their axes. You can see a few archer units have come back from routing too. And at this point, it looks like it's swinging into favor of the High Elves. And you can see Tyrion attempting to chase the Eye of Morghur, but he's not going to have the speed necessary. There's going to be some cavalry coming to assist him, which is good. They're going to need the assistance, but check it out. You got the throwing axes over here. Very big danger to Tyrion and the cavalry here. Huge danger, in fact. These units have taken a lot of damage now, which means they will have lost a lot of ammo, but if they can focus their ammo on killing Tyrion, the Beastmen can still very well win this matchup. Morghur is kind of a tank, and he's got some archer support and some cycle charges, so if from range these throwing axes can deal enough damage to Tyrion, it might be in business. Now, before I speak, I'm going to go take a look here. Yeah, Heart of Avalorn is present on Tyrion, so that could be rough, because he very well could regenerate a ton of hit points when he gets down low enough. So the Beastmen definitely kind of have an uphill battle at this point, but it's been a close one, and I think kind of illustrates some interesting stuff when it comes to Warhammer battles. Like for the Beastmen player, some might thought, oh, he was just done really early in this fight. No, not necessarily, actually. I think that if the focus from the Centaurs could have been better put on killing Tyrion a little bit earlier in this fight, and they very well could have, because you saw what they did to the Noble, then this may have turned out very differently. But Tyrion being alive a little bit later into this fight is going to play a big role here, because with Tyrion out of the picture, the rest of the High Elf roster ends up being fairly manageable here, I think, for the Beastmen. So what it goes to show is that sometimes battles will happen in phases. Sometimes they can be over very quickly. But many times they kind of happen in phases, especially when you're playing a lower leadership faction like the Beastmen. If you use your units properly and support properly as units come back from routing, if the enemy player cannot chase them off the battlefield effectively, then you certainly have a chance to bring a battle back even after an initial engagement that goes against you. So it's something to be aware of, and just, don't give up. Keep fighting. And especially with a character like Morghur, who heals, and I have Morghur, who needs to expend all of its ammunition, and so on. So fun battle here from Consul of Rome and the Central Scrutinizer. Enjoyed seeing this one. Let's take a look at some of the damage and statistics here, which I think will tell an interesting story. Tyrion coming in with some massive damage dealt. Probably a lot of this coming off of the Eye of Morghur. Very nice damage value for Tyrion at 2334. Definitely worth the character cost, considering that he's just on foot. So I would say that was well done. And a very nice performance. Now, if you look here, roughly the same amount of raw damage dealt by the Shadow Mage. Obviously, that damage value was lower because it's being used on cheaper units, but still, the damage dealt here is pretty intense and well done, I think, from the Shadow Mage. And then we come to the Noble, who had less than both, but still helped in that fight for quite a while. Let's take a look at the Rangers. Nothing crazy impressive. I mean, this one got a lot of raw damage dealt, but nothing crazy in terms of value. Look at the Silverin Guard, though. That unit definitely punched at the cost that was spent on it, so it was very well done. And then if we keep looking at others here, again, tons of damage dealt by all these Silverin Guards, so not unexpected in my opinion on the performance of these Silverin Guard here. The main way you wouldn't see these units perform is if they got kind of crunched up, either by Shadow Magic, which I think for the Beastmen, Shadow Magic is quite good. They can use it to support their cheaper infantry with like a Penumbral Pendulum, or something like the Pit of Shades, like you saw from the High Elves here. It does a good job of neutralizing these expensive units that could otherwise overwhelm the cheaper infantry units that you're going to see from the Beastmen. This Silver Helm apparently got absolutely owned, didn't get any value or damage dealt. And then the rest of the units here, nice work by the two Horse Archers. You know, I think that's pretty good considering their cost. And then the Frostheart Phoenix got dealt with pretty early and nicely by the Beastmen. Let's take a look at Morghur. Didn't pull a whole bunch of value. Not terribly surprising, I think, in this case, considering what he was up against. Pretty solid value out of the Shaman, though, and usually you can get good value out of the Shamans if they're used properly. Don't expect much from the infantry. The archers, though, like look at this archer right here. That's a pretty solid value for an Ungor Raider. So some of them did fairly well. The Centaurs with throwing axes, very nice value out of that one, and again out of the other. So you can see the value in these units, particularly in this battle. I think if they would have been able to stay alive a little bit longer and keep throwing their axes, these guys may have swung that as well. And then good value out of the Eye of Morghur overall. Looks like it paid for itself, did a ton of damage, able to get into melee. So a fun battle between Consul of Rome and Scrutinizer. Do hope you all enjoyed this one. I'll be back with more. If you want to see more, make sure you're subscribed. And as always, if you like the video, if you're watching it and you're like, hey, this is a cool battle, go hit that like button. It's something small, but it helps a lot. And then please also feel free to leave comments. All that kind of stuff supports the channel. Doesn't cost anything but a few moments of your time, and it's appreciated by me all the time. Anyway, HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I will see you all soon.